Welcome to the VOCN News Report. I am Lee Shaw. Here are the headlines for today. Autumn Rain Church in Chengdu was recently abolished by the local officials. A declaration was issued in response to the abolishment of the Autumn Rain Church by the Chinese House Church Alliance. 13 Christians were detained illegally by the local authorities in Guilin in Xinjiang province. 3 Christians were handcuffed and exposed on the TV channel in Luonan, Shanxi province. Shi Weihan, a Christian businessman, was sentenced to 3 years in prison for printing and distributing Bibles at no cost. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom listed China as one of the countries that merit special attention. Breaking news for today. The leadership of Autumn Rain Church has been very diligent to develop a good standing with the local government. However, despite their efforts, the government recently abolished the church. Here are the details. Autumn Rain Church in Chengdu was established by 3 Christians, including Wang Yi, in April 2005. It was started from a small house church, and by 2008, there were already over 100 Christians in the church. The church leader Wang Yi made a personal declaration on the 20th anniversary of the June 4th Tiananmen Square massacre. This fact may account for the recent government threat, surveillance, and harassment experienced by the Autumn Rain Church. Some of the church members were blocked from attending the Sunday church meeting as well. From the morning of June 21st, the government began to take comprehensive measures to stop the church members from gathering as a church. At first, the public security and joint defense officials stopped the believers from going into the church building. These officials are not actual policemen, and they did not provide any official identification. The church community then moved to a nearby tea shop. The owner was threatened by the officials and insisted that the church members leave the tea shop immediately. Finally, the church community moved to a nearby riverside. That afternoon, the government officials from the Civil Administration Bureau of Xinyang District in Chengdu City read an announcement of administrative punishment, which forcibly abolished the Autumn Rain Church. On hearing that the Autumn Rain Church was abolished, China Aid issued a response to Chengdu government's abolishment and persecution of the Autumn Rain Church. Here are the details of the response. China Aid has learned from Chengdu City, Sichuan Province, that the Chengdu government has been persecuting Autumn Rain Church since early this June. China Aid says that this is severe oppression and persecution of the citizens' human rights and their religious freedom, which is protected by China's constitution. This is also an invasion of Chinese citizens' freedom of speech and assembly. China Aid requests all relevant government departments in Sichuan Province to immediately cease persecution of Autumn Rain Church. Also, China Aid fully supports Autumn Rain Church in legally safeguarding their rights with humility and obedience. China Aid also calls the international community and brothers and sisters in all the churches to support and pray for Autumn Rain Church in order to promote the realization of religious freedom in China. In response to the abolishment of Autumn Rain Church in Chengdu, the Chinese House Church Alliance issued a declaration calling for churches to pray, condemning the evil of the government and urging the government to turn away from unrighteous practices. The declaration of the Chinese House Church Alliance emphasized on the following points. Churches are religious organizations, not regular social organizations. The abolishment of Autumn Rain Church in the name of an unregistered social organization does not conceal the fact of the government's infringement on citizens' religious freedom. The church's administration should be obedient to biblical principles, not under the control of other worldly authorities. Autumn Rain's meetings did no harm to the social security or social system, and this is appropriate for both laws and God's will. Chinese government should obey and respect the Article 18 of United Nations Civil and Political Rights and the international government, that citizens have the right to express their positions in religion and faith, and citizens have the right to have gatherings and meetings either publicly or privately. Here is the news from China. On May 31, 2009, in Kurulur, Xinjiang province, 13 Christians were forcibly taken away and detained in the local police station by a group of unidentified men. Their belongings and the property of the church were also seized. Here are the details. On May 31st, a group of unidentified men raided a house church where 13 Christians were meeting. The Christians were forcibly taken to Shangqiachi local police station and were detained for 12 to 24 hours. Their personal belongings were taken as well. Later, the local Bureau of Religion returned some of the confiscated items after the Christians asked for their return. However, authorities still retained a portion of the believers' belongings. Authorities in Luonan County in Shanxi Province have been persecuting the Christian church in the town of Chengguan since June 2009. Lately, the local authorities even humiliated 3 Christians by exposing them with handcuffs on the local TV channel. Here are the details. Since June 2009, authorities in Luonan County have been oppressing the Taochuan Christian Church in the town of Chengguan in Luonan County by abolishing the church, seizing church properties, and detaining the Christians. At the same time, they even humiliated 3 Christians, Liu Li, Wang Xiumin, and Xu Fenyin, by exposing them with handcuffs on the local TV channel, Luonan TV station. Facing this persecution, Christians in the church continue praying with endurance. Christian bookstore owner and house church leader Shi Weihan has been sentenced to 3 years in prison by Beijing People's Court of Law. Here are the details. Shi Weihan, age 38, was arrested on November 28, 2007 for printing and distributing Christian publications. 1.5 years after he was arrested on June 10th, the Beijing Haidian Court of Law sentenced him to 3 years in prison with a verdict of guilty of illegal business operation and a fine of over 150,000 Chinese yuan. This report has been confirmed by Chang Xingshui, Xi's attorney. Shi Weihan's wife, Chang Jing, said that after her husband was arrested, she was not allowed to visit him until the day of his sentencing. She said he became very thin. She said Shi Weihan was very calm after the announcement of the verdict and was able to make eye contact with her before leaving the court. Chang Jing said the harassment of her husband didn't change their faith in Christ. She believes God is training Chinese churches under intense circumstances and is preparing her husband under this specific circumstance to be devoted completely to the Lord. Here is the news from Washington, D.C. In the press conference of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom on May 1st, the annual report of 2009 International Religious Freedom was officially released. The report criticized the religious persecution of the Chinese and Sudanese governments. Geyer, the chairman of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, spoke in the press conference that the Chinese government continues to persecute its citizens, depriving them of religious freedom. Geyer said China has not shown any improvement in religious freedom for the past year. On the contrary, there has been a further deterioration. The Christian house churches are still under persecution and harassment. The believers are detained and suffering from excruciating treatment during their detentions. They are fined and their properties are seized. In the past year, there have been 764 house church leaders and believers arrested and detained, and thousands of house church members have been detained. Also, the underground Catholic churches are still experiencing persecution. Some of the bishops have been detained and imprisoned. This concludes the VOCN News Report. Thank you and see you next time.